Why does quicksand work so slowly? Question everything. Hyundai did. It's how they created the all-new Hyundai Tucson with available innovations like a huge 10.25-inch infotainment screen and digital key technology, allowing you to use your smartphone as a spare key. And you always get Hyundai's complimentary maintenance for 3 years or 36,000 miles. Test drive the 2022 Hyundai Tucson at your nearest Hyundai dealer or learn more at HyundaiUSA.com. Call 562-314-4603 for complete details.
Been thinking about McDonald's all day. Can't get it off my mind. I can already taste it. Ooh, got my mind on my mouth and my mouth ready for some Mickey D's deal.
There's a deal for every moment at McDonald's.
Right now, get 2 of your favorites for just $3.50. Mix and match a classic McChicken, a hot and spicy McChicken, or a juicy McDouble. Price and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with combo meal. Single item at regular price.
Transportista is a podcast that looks into the story of a mysterious pilot who spoke to us using a clandestine cell phone from inside a prison in North Carolina and claims to have worked in the international drug trade for some 30 years.
I'm Transportista. That's what I am.
He is also a man obsessed with telling and selling his own story. My name is John Gibler. This is Transportista. Listen to Transportista on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome in, podcast listeners. We've got a completely wide open show for all of you to dive into. We're breaking down the Sweet 16 and also the Deshaun Watson drama. Doug Gottlieb, NCAA tournament analysis with him in the second hour of the program. Also, Petros Papadakis swings by to talk about everything in the world of sports and beyond. All of that headed your direction. Appreciate all of you. Go give us 5 stars if you would. Danny G is going to read them, and you may be the 5-star winner this week. All that's still to come. The podcast, however, begins now.
Outkick the coverage with Clay Travis live every weekday morning from 6 to 9 a.m. Eastern, 3 to 6 a.m. Pacific on Fox Sports Radio. Find your local station for Outkick the coverage at foxsportsradio.com. Or stream us live every morning on the iHeartRadio app by searching FSR.
Now let's get this party started.
You're listening to Fox Sports Radio.
Right off the top here, I want to welcome in the network's 600th affiliate station. 600. Pretty incredible. Fox Sports Radio, 103.5 and 1510 AM. The Game in Spokane, Washington, the home of the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Perfect day to welcome you to Outkick in the Spokane area after the Zags' big win over Oklahoma. And as West Coast basketball remains ascendant, we have now reached the Sweet 16, and things are rolling in a big way for the Pac-12, and they are falling apart in a big way for the Big Ten. Thanks for hanging out with us. The Big Ten is down to only one team in the Sweet 16. 8 different Big Ten teams have already been eliminated. The talk coming into this tournament was, is it going to be possible for the Big Ten to get multiple Final Four teams? It turns out it was possible for the Big Ten to only get one team to actually make it's pretty incredible to think about, to make the Sweet 16 given what all the expectations were. So all of this is going to be interesting to break down as we move ahead. Was the Big Ten incredibly overrated? I think the answer is likely to be yes. Why did that occur? I think it's also likely to be because there weren't as many out of conference games as are typically the case. And so, as a result, just a unbelievable and poor performance by the Big Ten relative to what all expectations of that conference might have been. On the flip side, the Pac-12 could not have been better. Yes, Colorado went down and took it on the chin from Florida State, but other than Colorado, in the entirety of the Pac-12, There has been just one loss so far. The head-to-head Big Ten against the Pac-12. How about Oregon just coming out and absolutely running roughshod over Iowa? Iowa disappointing, one of the best teams that Iowa has ever had. Don't even make the Sweet 16. Same thing was true for Ohio State, generational type team. Illinois to not even make the Sweet 16 and go down to Loyola of Chicago. Credit to Michigan, which came back from I think it was a 5-point deficit midway through the second half to pull away, kill our blood bank guarantee, which was not able to cash. First one we have not cashed so far, but that was difficult overall for Big Ten fans who were thinking this might be the year when they start to put everything together. And I actually think it's an interesting question. Why is it that the Big Ten so often ends up wildly overrated? Because I think that's the storyline of the NCAA tournament's opening 4 days. If you had to say, okay, tell me what happened in a sentence. Some of you know this, a lot of you don't. Back in the day, I used to teach at Vanderbilt University. One of many jobs that I've had over the years. I got my Master's of Fine Arts in Creative Writing at Vanderbilt University. And when I was 27 or 28 years old, I was teaching my kids at Vanderbilt, the class that I had for creative writing. And I took something that I had learned when I was a creative writing student at George Washington from one of the teachers that I had there. And he said, hey, he had really bought into the idea that if you could tell a story in a sentence, you could distill whatever the story was into a sentence, you had a really good story to be able to tell. And it's interesting that that was his theory, because also in the law, there is, when you're in law school, they teach you, hey, if you can distill a case down into a question to kind of give everybody out there an understanding of what is at stake, you have been able to do an incredible job of analyzing what might otherwise be a complex scenario. And I really do believe that. I think the question when it comes to great intelligence is incredibly intelligent and knowledgeable people about a subject can make you or me understand something that would otherwise be wildly incomprehensible, and yet they understand it well enough to simplify it for us. And I'll give you an example. I'm not very good at science. It's been a long time since I was in any sort of science classroom. I know that we have a Mars rover that we have landed on that planet, basically, and it's beginning to explore. But if you knew Mars incredibly well, you would be able to talk to me and explain something in just an incredible detail, such that even I, who know very little about the planets now and very little about space, the most intelligent people about Mars, they could come on this radio program, and after they talk to us for 15 minutes, we'd all be a lot smarter, and we'd be able to understand something really complicated. So story in a sentence is actually a really valuable asset to be able to dive into. And what is wild in general, I think, is the story is one that nobody would have been able to predict. The NCAA story in a sentence is the Big Ten was wildly overrated and the Pac-12 was wildly underrated. And I got to tell you, we're going to talk to Petros Papadakis later in this show, but I think it's important to acknowledge just how far and away unexpected this level of dominance actually was. I mean, the level of dominance that we have seen from the Pac-12, I could have won an inordinate amount of money if I had come on and I had said, hey, USC and UCLA are both going to be in the Sweet 16. And if I had also come on and I had told you all of these games are going to be stacked up in the Pac-12, and the only one that they're going to lose on the opening Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Monday is an unbelievable tough loss for Colorado in a battle of a game against Florida State, nobody would have believed me. I don't think there's even the most dyed-in-the-wool Pac-12 fan that would have sat around and said, you know what, I think you're right, Clay. I think we are poised to have the greatest run in the conference going all the way back to when USC was dominant in football. Because that's how you decide whether or not a conference athletic departments are working, right? I understand there are other sports, baseball, women's basketball, that can get a certain amount of attention. If you're a hockey fan in one particular part of the country that loves hockey, there's some different teams that receive a substantial amount of attention, but it's pretty much football and it's pretty much men's basketball. And I don't think anybody out there, even the most diehard Oregon State fan, expected for Oregon State to beat Tennessee and Oklahoma State back-to-back and go to the Sweet 16 for the first time since 1982. And I don't think on Sunday, as you start to run through all these different matchups, that you thought to yourself, we're going to have a Sweet 16 game between two Pac-12 opponents in USC and in Oregon, and whoever wins that game is going to be able to go to the Elite Eight. And I certainly don't think there were very many UCLA fans out there who were saying, yeah, we're going to beat Michigan State, and then we're going to really get on a roll, and everything else is going to potentially end up happening, such that UCLA, such that Oregon, such that that USC, and also all these other teams are going to be rolling through like they are right now. It's going to be flat out unbelievable, a difficult argument to make. And on the flip side, again, I come back to NCAA tournament, story in a sentence. We have seen an incredible performance by the Pac-12, who were wildly underrated, and the Big Ten. I mean, you go back and look. This is what I was going to say about the Big Ten and the consistency with which it is overrated, I think, in basketball. I think it's fair to say, let's look at basketball championships in recent history in the NCAA tournament, right? Like, where are the champions coming from? And we'll figure out exactly what's going to happen here now. But when you look at basically in the 21st century, when you look at who's actually won the championships and where the conference championships have come from, just think about this, 21st century, all right? I'm not talking about anything else. We said so far the storyline has been Big Ten overrated, Pac-12 wildly underrated. The ACC in the 21st century, okay? The ACC won championships in basketball in 2001, 2002, 2005, 2009, 2010, 2015, 17, and 19. So the ACC, not a surprise, given all the attention. ACC, pretty good at basketball, and the 21st century has been great to the ACC in basketball. They have won 8 championships in the 21st century. All right, what about the Pac-12? 0. This is crazy, because I think a lot of you out there are like, what? This is wild. Do you know how many titles the Pac-12 has won in basketball since 1975? Okay, obviously all of the dominance that was going on with UCLA. I think a lot of people out there think Pac-12 basketball is really good. 95 and 97 are the only years since 1975 that a Pac-12 team has won the NCAA tournament. So we're talking about approaching 50 years of basketball. The Pac-12 has won twice in 95 or 97. We'll see whether or not it's possible that they could win now. The SEC, I think everybody thinks of the SEC as a football conference, but the SEC has won 3 different titles in recent history, 2006, 2007, and 2012. 2 with the Florida Gators, and then in 2012 with the Kentucky Wildcats. And then, by the way, if you want to go into the 90s, They won in 96 and 98. Those were 2 Kentucky championships. 94, I believe, was Arkansas. I think that was Scotty Thurman and the crew with Nolan Richardson that hoisted the hardware then. All right. I bring that up for this reason. The Big Ten has won in 2000. Michigan State won the NCAA tournament. Prior to that, you have to go back. I believe in 1989 was Michigan. I think that was the Ramil Robinson, the Steve Fisher run that they got on, if I remember correctly. Michigan in the Big Ten, they have won 1 conference championship. One NCAA tournament in the Big Ten since 1990. Think about that with me for now. That is a long time, going all the way back to 1990. We're talking about 30-plus years of NCAA tournaments. The Big Ten has won 1 title. Does that blow your mind, Dub, when I give you that stat? Would you have ever believed if I had said, hey, since 1990, how many national championships has the Big Ten won in basketball? Would you have ever believed that the conference as a whole has won 1 title in the last 31 years?
That's an astonishing stat when you think about it, because they have good basketball programs.
Ton of attention.
Absolutely.
Regularly highly seeded teams.
Yeah, and they're always on TV, and you see them all in the highlights. They're always in the Sweet 16, the Elite 8. There's always a team or 2, but to have 1 title out of the 30 years, it's almost unbelievable.
Shocking is how I would classify it. And I think there are a lot of people out there listening to me right now, and they're sort of in disbelief. And again, if you go back to think about the Pac-12 and the Big Ten, they almost never win titles. I mean, the Big East has not been very good, in terms of it being sort of pilfered. I think it's fair to say, in the way that they've set it up. But I mean, you're talking about pretty unbelievable failure level from the Big Ten. By the way, the Big 12, which has been in existence since 1997, won NCAA tournament title. I think that also shocks people. Let me repeat that again. The Big 12 has existed since 1997. They have won 1 title in 2008. That was Kansas. Obviously, sorry, Memphis fans, when the Memphis Tigers and John Calipari collapsed down the stretch. And as a result, the Kansas Jayhawks, Bill Self, won the title in 2008. I don't know when they're going to find themselves again. Mario Chalmers, yes, Mario Chalmers, for those of you who remember that name. I'm sorry again, Memphis fans. But that's kind of an amazing stat, too. I think it just contextualizes how much of our attention a conference like the Big Ten gets. And really, there isn't very much success to support that. And by the way, this is also true in football. If you strip away Ohio State, who obviously has won in 2002 and in 2014 in football, I think I got those years right. They won titles then. Michigan won a half title in 1997, I believe. I think that's right. With the Nebraska, I think they had a half title, Michigan and Nebraska, going all the way back to 1997. There's almost no championships that have been won by the Big Ten in the 2 biggest sports, basketball and men's basketball and football, in like the last 30 years. I mean, think about that for a minute. You have 2.5 titles in football and 1 title in basketball going all the way back in the last 30 years. When you consider how much attention these respective teams and conferences get as championship contenders, to have over 30 years and to have 3.5 titles represented in those 30-plus years, I think it stuns a lot of people to hear that. And the reason why I bring it up is, look, maybe Michigan, maybe they're going to make a run this year. Maybe the Wolverines are going to come out of the Sweet 16, the only remaining Big Ten team. Maybe they're going to get on a roll. Maybe they're going to be able to win a championship. It could happen. I'm not very optimistic that it's going to happen based on what we've seen from the Big Ten this year so far with all the high expectations. But it is worth asking the question, why are Big Ten schools so favorably thought of, despite the fact that they don't win championships very often? And I'll give you a big answer. One, there's lots of money at stake. The Big Ten Network, incredibly valuable. The size of the alumni and fan bases of these respective programs, also massive. And by the way, some people from Penn State might be saying, well, we won a title. I think it was in 95, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was. Look it up, Dub. What year did Penn State? They weren't in the Big Ten at the time. So when I'm talking about since 1990, I think, or was 95 the year that they had Kerry Collins and they got left out? I might have just driven everybody insane. Maybe they didn't win the title that year. But they obviously won in the 80s. They did. But it's pretty crazy to think about the lack of success. And the other thing I would say, so I think it's 3 reasons: money, huge fan bases, and on top of that, 81 and 86, 95 they went undefeated at Penn State. All right, so they would not even count, even if you wanted to count them. But what's interesting is I think it's a threefold aspect here. I think it's money. The Big Ten makes a ton of money, partly because, number 2, all of the fan bases and how many different teams desperately care. And in the third spot, I think it factors in, I think what's going on in some level is that the media follows the money and the size of the fan bases and makes you believe that the Big Ten Conference has been more successful in modern history than it actually has. And I think a part of that also is there are a lot of media members that are paid a lot of money to cover the Big Ten. And as a result, they get a lot of hype, but they don't necessarily follow up the hype with championships. For instance, I talked to you about the ACC. There's no doubt that ACC basketball is wildly hyped. But if you look at the number of championships that the ACC has won in the NCAA tournament, it's kind of justified. Same thing would be true in SEC football. If you look at what they've actually been able to accomplish in terms of the postseason in the SEC, it's hard to argue with all of the championships that the SEC has won. Same thing with the ACC. Therefore, all of the attention is justified based on the championships. Same thing can't be said about the Big Ten. 1 title since 1990 in the NCAA tournament. So what you're seeing this year is actually far more commonplace than most people would recognize. That 1 title, by the way, won by Tom Izzo in 2000 when Michigan State beat the Florida Gators in the national title game in that year. All right, when we come back, we're going to unpack. We got more of this crazy Deshaun Watson news. I want to talk a little bit more about that with you, tell you what the significance is. Also, scheduled to be joined by Doug Gottlieb to break down the NCAA tournament and by Petros Papadakis to break down everything going on in the world of Petros Papadakis as well. Should be a lot of fun. Appreciate all of you hanging out with us. This is Outkick on Fox Sports Radio.
This is Outkick the Coverage with Clay Travis.
What's up, everyone? It's me, 3-time NFL All-Pro Sean Merriman, and I have a new sports podcast called the Lights Out Podcast with Sean Merriman. This podcast is special to me as I get a chance to talk to some of the best who've ever done it on the field or the track. So whether it's talking to a Super Bowl champion or a NASCAR Cup Series champion, the Lights Out Podcast will bring it to you the only way I know how to. I'm giving you the best insight from the best who've ever done it. Listen to Lights Out with Sean Merriman on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcast.
Hey, basketball fans, if you're as pumped for the Tokyo Olympics as we are, you're going to want to sign up for Peacock, the streaming service from NBC Universal. Peacock is the home for U.S. men's basketball with every Olympic game streaming live. Get excited by checking out a behind-the-scenes look at this all-star team with the Peacock original docuseries for Ball and Country. This 6-part series gives you courtside seats to the 2021 training camp in Las Vegas. Watch as Kevin Durant, Damian Lillard, Jason Tatum, and others fight for the team's 4th consecutive gold medal. Plus, take a stroll down memory lane with never-before-seen footage of former Olympic players from the iconic Dream Team and Redeem Team. The U.S. men's basketball Olympic competition starts July 25th at 8 a.m. Eastern Time with their first game against France. Don't miss a minute of the action and go to peacocktv.com to sign up now.
What was the best thing before sliced bread? Why does quicksand work so slowly? Is it possible to plan a surprise party for a psychic? Question everything. Hyundai did. It's how they came up with the new idea and thinking needed to create the all-new, totally reimagined Tucson, their best Tucson ever. Questions like just how big you can make an infotainment screen. In the Tucson, the answer turned out to be a huge 10 1/4 inches wide. Or can your phone be a spare key? Utilizing the Tucson's digital key technology, the answer is a resounding yes. Better yet, you can share it with up to 3 people. And how do you make peace of mind come standard in an SUV? Hyundai's reply is complimentary maintenance for 3 years or 36,000 miles. It's your journey. Discover all that's new along the way by test driving the totally reimagined 2022 Tucson at your nearest Hyundai dealer, or learn more at HyundaiUSA.com. Call 562-314-4603 for complete details.
The rich and powerful want us to think the economy is a line on a stock market ticker. That's wrong. The economy is powered by us. It's what we create, what we buy, what we need. President Biden has proposed bold public investments in jobs and families, but more is needed. We need housing, healthcare, caregiving, action on the climate crisis, and millions of good-paying jobs. This is our moment to finally unlock prosperity for all of us. For more information, go to prosperus.org. That's prosperus.org.
Tuesday edition of the program, Sweet 16 set. By the way, those games scheduled to be played on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. So for everybody out there sort of planning the weekend, Sweet 16 games Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. And then that will lead in, obviously, to the Final Four. I think I speak for everyone out there who is a sports fan when we say fingers crossed. I hope we don't have another VCU-like situation where suddenly we have someone not able to play, not able to finish their season, and go out in the way that they had hoped. So as you move further along into the tournament, it becomes more and more imperative, I would say, for games not to be canceled, because at this point, we've so far only lost VCU, and certainly, knock on wood, we don't want this to happen at all, but if it were a truly, really good team that were to end up losing, that would be incredibly difficult to try to figure out how you would go forward from there. So fingers crossed that we will not have any major sort of issues coming out of the Sweet 16 as we get ready for those games on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. If you're just waking up with us, we started off the program obviously talking about the dominance of the Pac-12, and I blew everybody's mind by pointing out that the Big Ten has only won one championship in the NCAA tournament going all the way back to 1990. That, of course, was Michigan State in 2000 with Tom Izzo. No one else has won in the conference in the Big Ten in over 30 years. So we'll see whether or not Michigan can end that reign and become win their second title since the last one, I think, was won in 1989 with Ramil Robinson making the free throws, Steve Fisher as the coach. So can pay attention to that storyline out there and see exactly what ends up happening there. Also want to mention, we were talking about football championships. Nebraska people, yes, Nebraska won titles. I believe it was in 95 and 97. If I'm not mistaken, 95 was the Tommy Frazier giving the Florida Gators an absolute beatdown in that game. And then in 96, if I remember correctly, I think the Florida Gators bounced back, beat Florida State to win the national championship that year. They got a rematch against the Seminoles. 97, we had the split title between Nebraska and Michigan, and then 98 was Tennessee, followed by 99 being Florida State. That was the That was the game against, if you remember, Virginia Tech, when Peter Warwick, no one could cover him. That was Michael Vick also running through all the history there. Those are the games that I remember in the 90s. So Nebraska was not then a Big Ten team, and so you can't give a Big Ten title to a team that wasn't even a member of that conference. So that is worth thinking about as well. And again, Penn State getting left out as an undefeated team in a tough year when they used to be. Like, I keep talking to my kids about this, by the way, and they can't believe it. I was talking to my kids. They said, Dad, there used to be multiple teams in college football that could argue they were champions, and people just voted on who the best team was. There was no playoff. Yeah, that's what happened. And they're in disbelief. If you haven't had that conversation with your kids yet as they become college football fans, you just go ahead and dive in. That's coming. All right, those are all the discussions about the outstanding NCAA tournament issues. We got major issues that are still outstanding for Deshaun Watson. And the latest on the Deshaun Watson case is this. There are now 13 women that have accused him of sexual assault. And that is an unbelievable number of women to have accused him. 6 more lawsuits were filed yesterday against Deshaun Watson alleging sexual assault. And again, that brings it up to 13 different lawsuits that have been filed against Deshaun Watson since last week. And he also said that there was a 14th lawsuit that was going to be filed. That's what Tony Busby said on in Houston on Monday night. So 14 different lawsuits now that are being filed, all by women saying that Deshaun Watson in some way sexually assaulted them. And there are so many different, incredibly detailed allegations at this point in time. And Tony Busby also said, by the way, the attorney who represents all 14 of these women, he also said that he is going to turn all this information over to the criminal justice system so that the police can conduct their own investigation to determine whether or not criminal charges are appropriate. And there are more women out there that may be also filing their own lawsuits, again, as we are now up to 14 different women alleging that Deshaun Watson behaved in an inappropriate fashion with them. 14. I'm going to continue to unpack this a little bit, but you just need to think now for a moment about the scenario that is at play here. To my knowledge, this is truly a situation without precedent for any athlete ever. 14 different women while the athlete is playing. Now, Kellen Winslow and Darren Sharper are both in prison for serial misconduct of a sexual nature with women. But I can't remember an athlete that was in the prime of his career, like Deshaun Watson is, having this many different women alleging a form of sexual assault associated with massages that he was receiving. I've never heard of anything like this happening. And so we'll come back in the next segment, and I'm going to break this down for you. I'm going to put my lawyer hat on, and I think, if anything, that the vast majority of people out there are not aware of what an incredibly difficult situation Deshaun Watson now finds himself in. Because it's possible. Anything is possible. It's possible that all 14 women could be making it up. It is highly, highly improbable, based on my experience as an attorney, that it would be possible, especially because this is a top plaintiff's attorney who is filing these lawsuits, that it would be possible for a scenario like this to be at play and have this many women making up accusations like these. most of the time, athletes are he said, she said situations. One guy, one woman. I can't ever remember a time when 14 women were effectively telling the same story. I've never, ever remember a situation like this with a current athlete of Deshaun Watson's talents. This is just a mind-blowing story. When we come back, we'll discuss this in more detail. I'll tell you, I'll put on my lawyer hat and discuss it in a big way.
This is Outkick the Coverage with Clay Travis.
The Truth Hounds is a new investigative podcast. One like you've never seen before.
Well, one like you've never heard before.
Comedians and real-life friends Anna Saragina and Kyle Mazzono hold a humongous magnifying glass to life's smallest mysteries.
Well, the magnifying glass is special ordered, and it's gonna get delivered any day now. Customer service assures them.
Anyway, these mysteries are really small.
Why don't I have more followers on Instagram? Why is my neighbor always mean to me? Why do I look so bad in a hat?
Anna and Kyle will go to any lengths to sniff out the truth. There will be laughs. Ha, 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 ha. There will be tears. Why? Why? And there will be mysteries.
What is that right over there? Is that a ball or a guy's head?
They're going to find out.
Sniff, sniff.
Join Anna and Kyle every Tuesday for new episodes.
Listen to Truth Hounds on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Murder in Illinois is the new iHeartRadio podcast from the producers behind Happy Face and Murder in Oregon.
You don't really need to see the crime scene photos to have your heart broken.
What started as a family road trip ended as a massacre.
Murdered children, a murdered mother.
3 children were murdered by the last person they ever thought would harm them.
My best friend lost her life and is not here to tell the truth.
He said, they just arrested Chris. And her first words were, but he didn't do it.
Did the person convicted of 4 murders actually pull the trigger?
None of their theories of how this happened fit the crime scene evidence.
I'm Lauren Bright Pacheco. Join me for Murder in Illinois, Who Killed the Vaughn Family.
So crazy. This is all so crazy.
Listen and follow on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
I think a lot of us have had a moment that seems to change everything. Change is this ever-present force shaping our lives. But how does it really work? That's the question at the center of my new podcast, A Slight Change of Plans. I'm Dr. Maya Shankar. I'm a cognitive scientist who spent the last 2 decades studying how our minds work and how we change. In this podcast, I'll be having intimate, revealing conversations. You'll hear stories from Tiffany Haddish, Hillary Clinton, and Casey Musgraves. You'll also hear from a woman who left a religious cult and a Black jazz musician who convinced dozens of KKK members to leave the Klan. All of them have lived through extraordinary change. I hope you'll come away thinking differently about change in your own life. Listen to A Slight Change of Plans on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you like to listen.
All right, we're talking some about Deshaun Watson. Just let me give you a roadmap of where we're headed. Second hour of the program, Doug Gottlieb is going to join us, break down everything in the NCAA tournament. Third hour of the program, Petros Papadakis, fresh off of USC and UCLA, both advancing to the Sweet 16. We will discuss that with him. All of that still on the horizon. But right now, 14 is the reported number. Different lawsuits filed alleging sexual assault against Deshaun Watson by 14 different women. This is wild. And the significance of these lawsuits is massive in terms of what it means for Deshaun Watson. To me, there are now 3 different scenarios, it appears, that Deshaun Watson would have to somehow manage to avoid any punishment from in order to play football in 2021. And I think the likelihood of that happening is almost zero in terms of making the entire season and being able to play anywhere. And let me explain what I mean by all three of those situations that are offering different forms of peril for Deshaun Watson. First of all, these are civil lawsuits. It is unlikely that they will be resolved rapidly, certainly not before the football season starts in September, given that they are all being filed now. The likelihood of that happening is very, very low. There now also is going to be a criminal investigation into Deshaun Watson's behavior with all 14 of these women. The plaintiff's attorney, Tony Busby, in this case is requesting a grand jury, which could lead to indictments being brought of a criminal nature against Deshaun Watson. So that means that not only would Deshaun Watson be facing a massive number of cases and lawsuits, certainly totaling potential damages in the tens of millions of dollars, he would also be facing the potential that he is going to be charged with criminal charges here, which could then lead potentially to the possibility of Deshaun Watson facing years, let's be honest, with this many different potential criminal allegations, years behind bars. And then if he were able to somehow avoid any significant punishment or liability finding, both criminally and civilly, he would still have to deal with the investigation that the NFL has now brought to bear, which is also massively important in terms of his ability to take the field. And the NFL personal conduct policy doesn't require that he be innocent. It also doesn't require that he be not guilty. The mere perception of issues could be enough to require a suspension, which is what we all saw happen with a guy like Ezekiel Elliott a couple of years ago, when you'll remember Ezekiel Elliott was suspended for 6 games by the NFL, not allowed to play for the Cowboys, based on one woman's domestic violence allegation. And the charges were not brought, but the NFL said it was still significant enough to require him to miss 6 games. So we're talking about Deshaun Watson having to deal with civil, potentially criminal, and certainly the NFL own investigation in order to be able to play. I got to be honest with you. All of this evidence that is out there, I would put the chances that Deshaun Watson plays a full season of football anywhere in 2021 at virtually 0. And I think it's possible that Deshaun Watson may not play football again for years. And it's even possible that Deshaun Watson's football career could be over. That's how significant all of these allegations are. And frankly, I'm kind of blown away that more people in my industry aren't talking about these, because I don't know that we've ever seen a player as good as Deshaun Watson facing criminal charges potentially, and at a minimum 14 sexual assault charges in a civil context. I can't remember a player who was as good as Deshaun Watson ever facing this many serious charges. This many. Now, Ray Lewis had a double murder charge. Obviously, that was massive at the height of his career. But most of the athletes that have gotten in trouble, by and large, none of them have had this many different accusers that are involved as Deshaun Watson does right now, and none of them have been at the apex of their athletic ability, and certainly none of them have been a quarterback who would just sign a $160 million deal and extension like Deshaun Watson had basically done. This is unheard of. This is unprecedented, and it is a story that I believe is going to continue to build. And at this point, I think you have to say, where does this end? If we're already talking about 14 women alleging sexual assault against Deshaun Watson, how many more are there going to be? makes it really, really hard to argue that this is in any way a he said, she said kind of scenario. We are talking about an unprecedented situation in the NFL and indeed in athletics in general, to have this many different women alleging misbehavior. Now, we have to wait and see what's going to happen with the criminal investigation, whether there is a grand jury impaneled, whether any charges are brought against Deshaun Watson. But at this point in time, there is virtually no way, I believe, that Deshaun Watson is going to be able to play a full 2021 football season for anyone. At a minimum, I think just based on all these allegations and the precedent that the NFL has set over the years, he's going to end up suspended for at least some games, and that is the best case scenario for Deshaun Watson. He may not be able to play, and he might be facing severe criminal censure. I am Clay Travis. When we come back, we'll dive into the NCAA tournament again at the top of the second hour. This is Outkick on Fox Sports Radio.
Be sure to catch live editions of Outkick the Coverage with Clay Travis weekdays at 6 a.m. Eastern, 3 a.m. Pacific.
The rich and powerful want us to think the economy is a line on a stock market ticker. That's wrong. The economy is powered by us. It's what we create, what we buy, what we need. President Biden has proposed bold public investments in jobs and families, but more is needed. We need housing, healthcare, caregiving, action on the climate crisis, and millions of good-paying jobs. This is our moment to finally unlock prosperity for all of us. For more information, go to prosperus.org. That's prosperus.org.
I'm Dr. Payman Danielport.
And I'm Dr. John Lakey. We invite you to listen to our new podcast, Forever Young. Together, we're partners in practice at Beverly Hills Plastic Surgery Group, the renowned plastic surgery center in the heart of Beverly Hills, California.
Join us every Tuesday as we put you under the knife and offer a glimpse behind the surgical mask into the fascinating world of cosmetic surgery, the latest breakthroughs in skincare, and what you can do to look and feel forever young.
Forever Young premieres July 21st. Listen on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Tickets are on sale now for our 2021 iHeartRadio Music Festival, September 17th and 18th in Las Vegas. Billie Eilish, Cheap Trick, Coldplay, Dua Lipa, Florida Georgia Line, J. Cole, Journey, Khalid, Lil Baby, Maroon 5, Nelly, Sam Hunt, Weezer, special guest performance by Phineas, and more on the T-Mobile Arena Nighttime Stage. Get tickets now through AXS.com. That's AXS.com.